Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight, Nigerian women join their counterparts the world over to challenge bias and gender inequality as they commemorate International Women's Day. House of Representatives promises to remove obstacles militating against development of women through relevant legislations. More top government officials receive COVID-19 vaccine as Ogun becomes the first state to take delivery of its share. And trial of police officer involved in George Floyd's murder delayed over selection of jury. Last business and later international news from our London studios.
On business news tonight, first female Director General of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Professor Ndiokereke Onyike, calls for more female participation in the capital market as the world marks International Women's Day.
On sports news, the Court of Arbitration for Sport rules Ahmad Ahmad's 5-year ban will be reduced to 2 and in hopes of the Malagasy running for another term as CAF president.
And from Abuja, INEC chairman orders electoral commissioners to begin stock-taking of electoral materials ahead of 2023 elections.
It's global accolades for the women as they commemorate the International Women's Day. Every March 8th, women celebrate the achievements and raise awareness about gender equality. And this year, the focus is on the theme, Choose to Challenge, a campaign against bias and inequality. Today is usually commemorated in a variety of ways worldwide, as it is a public holiday in several countries, while in others, it is marked with special events. Here in Nigeria, it's a day to bring attention to issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights, and violence against women. Our correspondent, Temitope Fagbemi, takes a look at some iconic Nigerian women who are making the country and indeed the continent of Africa proud.
Celebrated annually on March the 8th, International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. The campaign theme for International Women's Day 2021 is Choose to Challenge, with people being called on to choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. According to UNICEF, Nigeria's maternal mortality rate remains high and more girls than boys are out of school, exposing them to different forms of abuse. However, it's not all doom and gloom for Nigeria, as a number of trailblazing women are making the country proud. An example is Nigeria's richest woman, Folorunsho Alakija.
What a man can do, a woman can do. And I don't see any reason why a woman shouldn't be able to do it. You can prove your points, you understand me, by letting them know that, listen, I've done this, I can do the next one.
Another trailblazer is the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who resumed office on March the 1st.
Today, WTO members are making history. For the first time in the 73 years of GATT and WTO, you are selecting a woman and an African as Director General. This is groundbreaking and positive.
UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is another woman making Nigeria and Africa proud.
When people see me in the United Nations, I remind them that I started my school in Maiduguri. So you can become anything that you wish to be. You just have to work hard, and you have to believe, and you have to do the right thing, and you have to have faith. Whichever faith you have to have faith.
Beautiful, intelligent high flyers like former Vice Presidents of the World Bank, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili and Aruma Ote also make the list. And corporate Amazon Ibukwa Woshika cannot be left out. Whether in the corporate world, in politics, on the home front, Nigerian women are making a mark because they dare to challenge stereotypes and rise above real and emergent limitations. So the question for all women, and men as well, on International Women's Day is, will you choose to challenge? Doing so brings us a step closer to reaching the 5th Sustainable Development Goal of achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls by the year 2030. Temi Tokwe Fagbemi, reporting for Channels Television News.
In the meantime, Nigeria's First Lady, who has been quiet for some time now, has also been making her views known on the occasion of the International Women's Day. The First Lady, Aisha Buhari, who is believed to be in Dubai, said in a statement that the International Women's Day is yet another time for leaders to end the cases of abductions of women and girls in the country. The president's wife, in a statement, called on all Nigerians to continue to exert their different levels of influence and bring an end to kidnappings. Her message reads in part, "The day offers yet another opportunity for humanity to review and reflect progress made on issues of women and girls. I call on all stakeholders to continue to exert their different levels of influence to bring these abductions to an end and to assure us that girls are safe anywhere they may find themselves." Mrs. Aisha Buhari's message also touched on the need to appreciate the efforts of women and girls in the fight against COVID-19, just as she congratulates women all over the world for their resilience, hard work, and commitment to the progress of humanity. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has pledged that the Ninth House will remove all obstacles militating against the development of women through relevant legislations. He made the pledge during an event organized by the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians to mark the International Women's Day. Our correspondent, Terry Ikumi, reports.
Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Clerk of the National Assembly are among those at the 2021 International Women's Day celebration organized by the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians. In her remarks, Chairperson of the African region of Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, Zainab Gimba, emphasizes on the need to pay attention to women whom she says have been hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic.
There are more women who have lost their jobs. Many girl child have dropped out of school due to unwanted pregnancy, and gender-based violence have increased. As members of parliament, we must ensure that every measure put in place by the government to combat the pandemic is gender-focused.
According to the United Nations, reported incidents of gender-based violence cases in Nigeria from 24 states showed that in March 2020, 346 cases were reported, while in the first part of April, incident reports spiked to 794, depicting a 56% increase in just 2 weeks of lockdown.
This is a matter of constitutional amendment in many regards, and we will be up and doing, and I trust the Ninth House will be up to the task in removing whatever obstacle, whatever hurdles there are to make sure that this thing is a thing of the past.
I want to challenge our women parliamentarians in the National Assembly to rise to the occasion of drastically reducing domestic violence by men against women in Nigeria. Specifically, our women parliamentarians can generate a bill to stop wife battery in Nigeria.
Meanwhile, a member of the House Committee on Women Affairs is calling for more attention to be paid to women in the North.
I think there is need for us to train more of our women because of our cultural beliefs and religious beliefs, So there is work. I'm not trying to look at it from an isolative perspective, but the fact of the matter is we must encourage our women, our children to take on some of these courses.
With the theme Choose to Challenge, the 2021 International Women's Day harps on women's rights, insisting that opportunities empower women more broadly in society and benefits everyone. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
This brings some more perspective to our lead story on the International Women's Day celebration. A while ago, I spoke with a former member of the House of Representatives, Nina Okeje, about the plight of women in Nigeria. And after wishing her a happy International Women's Day, I started by asking her what this day means to her.
Well, thank you very much. It's been said that the Nigerian woman is celebrated every day, but it just takes one day to set aside, to highlight her challenges, to highlight her successes, and to reinforce the need for integration. It is a day for us to act actively investigate, interrogate the issues, the human rights question as to the inclusion of women, the economic question as to the inclusion of women, the compassionate question, and just the common sense question about the absolute need for there to be diversity and inclusiveness. For me, it's a day that gives me the freedom to speak unfettered about the need for inclusion of women in governance, and the fact that over time, even though it may appear that we're making some success, in actual fact, we're not going as far as we want to go.
The COVID-19 pandemic has had adverse effects on the average woman who's had to struggle to take care of business and the home front. How would you celebrate the Nigerian woman in light of these?
Everybody has said that, the pandemic has exacerbated already pre-existing conditions in the world and in Nigeria in particular. Of course, poverty wears an African woman's face in power and wealth. It has a masculine feature. But in the face of all of this, we continue to celebrate the absolute resilience of the Nigerian woman. In spite of social, political, economic, even security challenges of the Nigerian woman, she has held her own and she's held the country together. So in what ways would I celebrate the Nigerian woman? I think that in spite of the fact that not enough is said about the Nigerian woman, in spite of the fact that the Nigerian woman is not at the table when it comes to conflict resolution, in spite of the fact that the Nigerian woman is not in enough boardrooms, in spite of the fact that the Nigerian woman is not in the room when the decisions about policies that even affect the Nigerian woman is concerned, we're still able to hold up our end of the conversation. The Nigerian woman is worthy of celebration just for her resilience.
But would you say the women are well represented today in the executive suite?
Would you say that we are at 8%? At 8% of the entire population representation of women, 3.5% for elective positions, and 8% overall. Of course, we're not ably represented. And, I think the best way to look at it is in terms of the population of women. 50% of the Nigerian population, 49%, depending on who's counting. And again, it's the men who are counting. So, of course, they're not going to give us the 1% that makes us equal to them. So 49% of the Nigerian population is women. And if 3.8% of that population is only represented in elective positions and 8% overall, Nigerian women are shut out.
When you look at the circumstances the women are in today in Nigeria, how do you see the Nigerian woman in the next 10 years?
The gender parity index says it's going to take 95 years for us to reach gender parity. So 10 years is a fraction of that time. But, I see that there's a certain commitment, especially with the millennials. There's a certain audacity to what it is that they do. And you find that there is a deliberate attempt to try to roll back and close up the spaces on inequality. And I find that just the deliberate and the committed enthusiasm of especially the young generation, the next generation, not just sit back and take things that are thrown at them, will probably hasten the lack of equality and close the disparity between men and women. I find that the next generation is audacious and they're driven.
And hopefully we will make the results that we are expecting. Former member of the House of Representatives, Nina Okejo, thank you so much for speaking with us on the news at 10. And once again, a happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and happy International Women's Day and every day during the year. It is, after all, Women's Day every day. Thank you.
In part two, after the break, we have more of the International Women's Day celebration, plus more top government officials receiving COVID-19 vaccine as Ogun becomes the first state to take delivery of its share. Join us again. Welcome back. If it is joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Nigerian women join their counterparts the world over to challenge bias and gender inequality as they commemorate International Women's Day. House of Representatives promises to remove obstacles militating against development of women through relevant legislations. More top government officials receive COVID-19 vaccine as Ogun becomes the first state to take delivery of its share. And trial of police officer involved in George Floyd's murder delayed over selection of jury. A civil society organization, the Coalition of Women Leaders in the Partnership for Advocacy in Child and Family Health at Scale project, are asking for adequate funding for essential health services such as routine immunization. The project director of the organization, Dr. Mini Oseji, questions the 75% cut from the 2019 family planning budget, but admits that the cut was reallocated in 2021, beg your pardon, though it has not been released. As she observes that COVID-19 related expenditure got prompt and dedicated budget, and same should be done to essential health services.
This year's International Women's Day celebration is coming at a time when the world is grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, the maternal mortality rate of Nigeria as at 2020 is 814 per 100,000 live births, and the infant mortality rate is 59 deaths to 1,000 lives. Over the years, this coalition of women leaders under the Partnership for Advocacy in Children and Family Health at Scale project have been challenging public officials to keep the promise of prioritizing essential health services.
As CSO leaders of the Park for Scale project, we have done the research and know the reality on the ground is one where adequate funding is not made available for essential health services. We also know that even when funding is allocated, it's seldom released in a timely manner. Moreover, while there are clear and dedicated budget lines for COVID-19 related expenditure, budget lines for essential health services such as routine immunization are not separated. Rather, funds for routine services are merged together in bundled up and opaque lines, labeled in some states as counterpart funds.
They appeal to the government to make maternal and infant mortality a prime consideration.
As a people, as a government, we need to improve our services to ensure that infant mortality and maternal mortality are brought to the barest minimum.
For the president of National Council for Women's Societies, the pandemic impacted both negatively and positively on women.
Before the COVID, women used to go to places to get family planning, either to their private doctors or to family planning clinics and so on and so forth. But with the lockdown and with the health people busy with the COVID-19 pandemic, there was no way they could get their family planning. And of course, the men are at home. And you know what happens. And we are talking about population outbursts. But the positive part of it was that, well, we were challenged to know how to work from home. People started working from home. People started trading from home.
As the world marks the International Women's Day, these women leaders expect the government to match words with action and provide adequate funding for essential health services.
I'm going to toss it over now to Terry Ikumi in Abuja for more on the news at 10. Hi, Terry.
Hello, Amarachi, and welcome to the nation's capital. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, and all the members of the PTF have received the first jabs of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine today in the nation's capital. The SGF says the decision to administer the vaccine on members publicly is to help the government combat vaccine hesitancy, which the task force identifies as a potential challenge which needs to be addressed urgently as the rollout to states commences.
Call it a promise kept, and you may not be wrong. Members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 file out one after the other to receive their first jab of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in Abuja. Prior to its arrival in the country, the task force promised to get vaccinated in full glare of the media to instill public confidence about the safety of the vaccines. The chairman of the task force, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire, and other members of the task force, including the country representative of the WHO and some journalists covering the briefing, get their first jab of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
It's Jeb, sir.
The PTF chairman underscores the need to combine vaccination with the non-pharmaceutical measures for adequate protection. He also warns against vaccine hesitancy.
Let me restate that Nigerians should never allow vaccines hesitancy propagated through conspiracy theories sway you from the path of doing the right thing.
The executive director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency announces the distribution of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to states.
Adequate provision has been made to deploy the COVID-19 vaccines to all states and vaccination sites where people will be vaccinated according to set priorities. The state launch of the COVID-19 vaccination for frontline health workers is slated for tomorrow, March the 9th, at the state treatment centers. Barring any prevailing local conditions, most governors have agreed to flag off on March the 10th, while the state rollout of COVID-19 vaccines will commence from the 12th of March.
Nigeria symbolically rolled out the COVID-19 vaccines on Friday, March the 5th, beginning with the vaccination of frontline health workers, and later President Buhari and Vice President Osinbajo on Saturday, March the 6th. Although the government says it targets 70% of the country's population to be vaccinated by the year 2022, inadequate vaccines and hesitancy currently stir the government in the face.
Well, apart from the members of the PTF, the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, and the Permanent Secretary of the State House, Tijani Umar, also took their first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine today. They were vaccinated by the Chief Nursing Officer, Dr. Esther Ibrahim, at the Special Care Center of the State House Clinic, Abuja. The Chief of Staff, who described the process as painless, says he is simply following the President's footsteps as a responsible Nigerian. He urged all eligible Nigerians to present themselves for the vaccination so Nigeria can attain herd immunity.
Vaccination exercise, and also, of course, the frontline health workers here in the State House Clinic for administering it. I want to assure that my experience in receiving this was almost painless, and I'm just following the footsteps of our leader, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, who has demonstrated leadership at the highest level by being the first to receive the vaccine, followed by His Excellency the Vice President. So I'm just following the footsteps and learning leadership by example. So all eligible Nigerians should take this vaccine. It is safe and it is painless, and the benefit is immense because it's not just for the individual, but the more Nigerians that are vaccinated, the more we develop the herd immunity, which will keep our country safe and our people healthy.
Ogun State government has received 50,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, making it the first state in the country to take delivery of the vaccines since its arrival in the country last week. The state governor, Dakwa Abiodun, promised the immediate deployment of the vaccines to all the local government areas in the state and across its 236 wards. He says the state is still awaiting the second batch of another 50,000 doses of the vaccines. The governor commends President Muhammadu Buhari for his purposeful leadership, just as he asked residents to continue to adhere strictly to COVID-19 safety protocols. Away from the pandemic now, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has directed all resident electoral commissioners to take inventories of electoral materials under their care and report same to the commission to help it plan ahead for the next general election in 2023. He gave the directive at a meeting with the commissioners in Abuja. The INEC chairman explains that the directive is to enable the commission address the recurring logistics challenge, which have often impacted negatively on the outcomes of elections.
As you are also aware, the commission is committed to deepening the culture of planning for elections. The current 5-year plan, covering the period 2017 to 2021, expires this year. For this reason, a committee involving the participation of some resident electoral commissioners was inaugurated a few weeks ago to review the strategic plan and the strategic program of action to cover the next cycle of 5 years, 2022 to 2026. As we continue to plan for the next general election, the RECs have been directed to compile and submit an inventory of all election materials in order to determine shortfalls and take early steps to ensure their adequacy and availability.
When the news at 10 returns, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) arrests notorious drug trafficker at Lagos Airport. That's on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. To legal matters now. The Court of Appeal sitting in Benin City, the Edo State capital, has set aside the judgment of the State High Court, which nullified the candidacy of the deputy governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the 2020 governorship election, Audu Ganiyu, and governorship candidate Osage Izeyamu. The High Court had, in the judgment delivered on the 6th of January 2021, held that Ganiyu had submitted false information to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). In delivering judgment on 3 separate appeals filed against the judgment by Osage Izeyamu, Audu Ganiyu, and the All Progressives Congress, the Court of Appeal today held that the case at the High Court was statute barred as the matter was filed out of time. As to the claim of forgery, the Court of Appeal set aside the judgment of the lower court, holding that it lacked merit, as no proof of forgery was made against the defendant, and the claims concerning the differences in spelling of name amounted to mere discrepancies and not enough to prove otherwise. No other person had come out to claim that the appellant was using his certificate. Well, that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Amarachi, and happy International Women's Day.
I was going to hold you to account there, Terry. Thanks a lot. As Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo turned 64, accolades have continued to pour in from across the country. A group known as the Building the Future Forum organized a public lecture which focused on nation building, with speakers applauding the Vice President for his commitment to championing an economic revolution. Our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
It was a gathering of friends, colleagues and well-wishers at the Nigerian Air Force Conference Center in Abuja as the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who joined the event virtually, turned 64.
To challenge,
Panel discussions are held on building Nigeria's future through enterprise and innovation.
We are a country that, is heavily, mostly youth populated, and you see people from left, right and center that are having to critically think and develop new ways of solving problems in our country by starting businesses, and it's evolving and it's happening very rapidly. So we're at a time now where there's an opportunity to tap into that potential.
We will always be a work in progress. The country will always be a work in progress. But we also need to encourage, we as citizens need to play our role. And the role of the administration or government is to give us the platform or the opportunity to play that role.
Professor Osinbajo has had an illustrious career as a lawyer and politician and has in this time made a name for himself as a champion of solution-based governance.
His recent remarks on the prohibition
of cryptocurrencies, in which he said, and I quote, that we must not regulate out of fear, but with knowledge, was another defining moment in respect for a mind that comes across without ruffling feathers, but clearly and distinctly about the honest and efficient truth, and at times, according to our goal, the inconvenient truth.
The Vice President is a very strong advocate of enterprise and innovation and has been championing the role of young Nigerians in driving the revolution that will reposition the country as a foremost economic hub for the continent.
Thank you. Let's give it up for the Vice President.
I just want to thank you very, very much for this wonderful surprise, and to say that I pray that all of you will also be celebrated in various ways, and that the Lord God Almighty will bless you and keep you, and that our country that we talk so much about, and that we want that indeed in our lifetimes we will see the glory of our country. In our lifetimes we will see all of our dreams come true concerning our country. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
It has been an eventful 64 years for Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who has stood firmly by the side of President Muhammadu Buhari since his assumption of office in 2015. By February of 2023, the Buhari-Osinbajo era will be over, and the nation awaits what plans Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has for the future. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Officials of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency earlier today, unwrapped 3 parcels of cocaine intercepted after a notorious drug trafficker was arrested at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. NDLEA officials say the notorious drug trafficker, Hassan Bishi Taiwo, was arrested with the banned substance concealed in a false bottom created in his suitcase. Preliminary investigations also revealed that Hassan, who was intercepted at the e-arrival hall of the airport upon arrival on board an Ethiopian Airlines flight, has been plying the illicit trade through the Middle East routes for some time now. The NDLEA says the suspect came into Nigeria through Addis Ababa, but that he actually traveled to Addis Ababa from Abuja. Meanwhile, operatives of the Anambra State Command of the agency also recovered 58.5 grams of cocaine and 13.9 grams of heroin concealed in the palace of a prominent traditional ruler in the state. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has asked residents of the state to continue to trust his administration for more infrastructure development, saying the PDP is a political party that fulfills its promises. The governor said this during the commissioning of the Rumuji Iba Obele Isiokpo Road by the former governor of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido.
It's one of the many road projects constructed by the Wike-led administration as part of his rural development agenda in Rivers State. Carefully marked for better traffic management, the 16.85-kilometer road cuts across 4 communities of Rumuji, Iba, Obele, Isiokpo in 2 local government areas of Emohua and Ikwere. Having been left in disrepair for many years, the colorful cultural performances explain the level of excitement of the people to have their communities connected. Special guest, former governor of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido, commends Governor Wike for his visionary leadership. He challenges the APC-led federal government to raise the bar of governance.
Governor Wike, please be kind enough to reach out to the Minister of Works in Abuja and say, come to me, let me teach you how to do your own job. Call him. Because it's a duty to others so that we can support them. They can't think. They have no vision. They have no feeling. They have no compassion. They are there for the power. And the power is there now tormenting them. Because the power is abused.
For Governor Wike, his administration is determined to develop all parts of the state.
I'm sure all those from this Isobo, Obele, Eba, and Rumuji will look back and reflect how this road was. Do not forget easily how this road was.
Today, all of us can come back home. Today, all of us can go to the market. Today, all of us can drive freely. Those from Ishobo can pass through here and go to Emewa. Those from Umuji, and all of you can pass through here and go to the airport.
There was more to the project commissioning as some members of the APC in the area defected to the PDP. They say this is a show of gratitude to Governor Wike's style of leadership, particularly his infrastructure development efforts.
Time for business news. Here's Anne Wawadu, who I'm going to wish a happy International Women's Day.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Happy International Women's Day to you, to Amarachi, and to all the women around the world. Welcome to Business News. Let's begin with the capital market, saying it is not left out of the International Women's Day celebration, as the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers today held the Women in Nigerian Capital Market to celebrate Women Today. The event had in attendance the first female Director General of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Professor Ndi Okereke Onyuke, the first woman to be licensed and inducted into the stockbroking profession, Mrs. Elizabeth Eby, and some senior stockbrokers. While commending gender equality in the market, Professor Okereke Onyuke mentioned that women have contributed a lot to the growth and development of the Nigerian capital market, which he says deserves celebrating. And talking about the domestic market, it has gotten off to a positive start from last week. In this new week, regaining about 1/5 of more than 240 billion naira lost in the 4 trading sessions last week. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. About 34 billion naira is gained at the close of today's trading at the NSE after investors take a pause for the fixed income market to renew their interest for some low-priced, high-value equities. I'm sure we didn't expect to see the bull return so soon after its rival dominated 4 trading sessions last week and knocked off more than 240 billion naira from the total value of listed equities. In fact, the positive start in the new week comes with a combination of mixed performance. On the sectoral chart, we see gains from Lafarge, Ardova, and Wando lift the industrial goods as well as the oil and gas index. Although big banks like UBA, Axis, Zenith, and FBN Holdings recorded some gains, the 1.58% drop on Zenith Bank pushed the banking sector index in the red. And this is because today is the last day before Zenith's share price will be marked down for dividend payments. Meanwhile, stocks performance on the price chart ended with a positive margin, with 26 gainers led by Ardova against 15 losers led by Maya. The second week of March has also begun positive gain, but let's keep our fingers crossed as we expect a batch of corporate earnings to hit the market in the coming days. And that's the Stock Market Report.
Thank you, Laddie. Let's hope that trend continues throughout this week. Meanwhile, major global markets have ended today's trading session with mixed sentiments, with sell-off recorded by tech shares on Wall Street, while European stocks cheered the passing of $1.9 trillion economic relief and stimulus bill by the U.S. Senate over the weekend. Let's see the closing numbers for today. And that's Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Let's back to you, Amarachi.
So easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Anne. And still ahead of the news at 10, trial of police officer involved in George Floyd's murder, delayed over selection of jury. We'll also have more from our London studio. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. Judge Peter Carriel has delayed the start of the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer accused of killing George Floyd last May. The judge's decision followed prosecutors saying they would ask the appeals court to delay proceedings as the panel weighs whether the third-degree murder charge can be brought against Mr. Chauvin. Simon Pusey has more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, has accused the royal family of raising concerns about how dark their son's skin might be and pushing her to the brink of suicide in a highly controversial interview.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was a very clear and real and frightening, constant thought.
Sitting down with Oprah Winfrey, she described herself as a sort of prisoner in Kensington Palace, as her efforts to seek medical help were rebuffed by palace officials who were worried about the impact on the monarchy. Meghan claimed members of the royal family went to extraordinary lengths to deny her son Archie a royal title, and that they had refused to provide him with security.
I've never blindsided my grandmother.
Harry also spoke, explaining that they had to step back from royal duties because of a lack of understanding and because he was worried about history repeating itself.
Then you add race in, and you add social media in. And when I'm talking about history repeating itself, I'm talking about my mother. I think she would feel very angry with how this has panned out and very sad. But ultimately, all she'd ever want is for us to be happy.
2 protesters have been killed by gunshot wounds to the head as Myanmar's biggest trade unions have begun a nationwide strike in the latest anti-coup protests. Videos have emerged of police storming into a university in Mandalay, arresting teachers and even beating a medical student lying on the ground. Protesters can be seen escaping as police forces have been firing stun grenades and tear gas to break up demonstrations in Yangon. At least 50 people have been killed by police and the military since the demonstrations began. Thousands of women have joined protests by farmers on the outskirts of Delhi to mark International Women's Day. They have demanded the scrapping of new laws that open up agriculture produce markets to private buyers. Since December, many farmers have camped at 3 sites on the outskirts of the Indian capital to oppose the biggest farm reforms in decades, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government says are necessary to modernise agriculture. Protesters have blocked roads with burning tyres all over Lebanon for the 7th consecutive day. Demonstrators have been blocking roads daily since the collapse of the Lebanese pound, as they are demanding an end to the economic crisis that has prevailed for more than a year and a half of political paralysis. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost in the crisis, bank accounts have been frozen, and many have started to go hungry. Senegal is bracing for mass protests as detained opposition leader Ousmane Sonko is due to appear in court. Mr. Sonko is set to face questions about a rape charge which he says is politically motivated. The arrest has sparked days of unrest, leading to the worst violence for years in the country. 5 people, including a schoolboy, have been killed in consecutive days of clashes. Opposition supporters have set fire to cars, looted shops and hurled stones at police during the anti-government protests. Pope Francis has completed his historic tour of Iraq, departing the capital Baghdad after visiting conflict-torn cities. During the Pope's trip, the first ever papal visit to Iraq, he toured 4 cities, including Mosul, the former ISIL stronghold, where vast areas still lie in ruins. In his addresses, he delivered messages of peaceful coexistence. At the end of the Mass, in the last official event of his visit, Francis told the crowd, "Iraq will always remain with me in my heart." And finally, Russian health enthusiasts have participated in a 4-stage winter sporting event that includes bikini jogging, skiing and ice swimming. Known as a cryothon, participants braved sub-zero temperatures in swimsuits and shorts, while many of them are also shirtless. They dashed through a Moscow park, cheering up passers-by as they rushed from one physical exercise to another. According to widespread beliefs in Russia, ice swimming and enduring cold during physical exercise are considered among the best ways to keep fit and healthy. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, has partially upheld the appeal of CAF President Ahmad, who is challenging the decision of the adjudicatory chamber of the FIFA Ethics Committee, banning him from all football-related activities for a period of 5 years. CAS, in its ruling earlier today, reduced the length of the suspension to 2 years, starting from today, and has also reduced his fine of over $200,000 to just $54,000. Chelsea FC have cemented their grip on 4th place in the English Premier League as Kai Havertz finally delivered an influential display in their vital 2-0 victory against top 4 rivals Everton earlier this evening. Havertz has endured a disappointing first season following his £70 million move from Bayer Leverkusen last year. World number 1 Novak Djokovic says it has taken a lot of blood, sweat and tears to break Roger Federer's record of 310 weeks ranked as world number 1. The 33-year-old Serb set the record today for most weeks at number 1 in the 48-year history of the ATP rankings. And that's a wrap on sports news. Is back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Ayatunde. And the main news again, Nigerian women today joined their counterparts across the world to challenge bias and gender inequality as they marked the International Women's Day. The wife of the president, Aisha Buhari, called for an end to abduction in the country. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night and a happy International Women's Day every day.